I walked in while my boss was changing, and it changed everything. The second I opened that door, I felt my whole future crack. Margaret Bennett was standing right there in front of me, halfway out of her blouse, her hair falling loose over her shoulders instead of pulled tight like it always was. For one frozen second, neither of us moved. The air felt thin. My lungs forgot how to work. The only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the building and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stood in the doorway holding a stack of printed reports against my chest like they could protect me from what I had just seen. Her eyes were wide, shocked, but not weak. They were the same sharp eyes that ran our entire analytics department, except now they were caught in a moment that was never meant for anyone else. "Logan," she said, her voice tight but controlled. That was when my brain finally turned back on. "Oh my God, I am so sorry." I rushed out, my voice shaking. "I thought this was the conference room." My face burned. I looked down at the carpet so fast my neck hurt. I took a step back, then another. But she moved quickly, pulling her blouse closed, regaining her composure like she always did. "Calm down," she said, lowering her voice. "It's okay. Just put the files on the desk and we'll pretend this never happened." Pretend? The word hit harder than anything else, because pretending meant it was real. "Of course," I said too fast. "You can trust me, I swear." I walked forward without looking at her. Each step felt careful, like I was walking across glass. I placed the papers on the edge of her desk. My hands would not stop shaking. Then I backed out of the room and closed the door slowly, gently, like the handle might explode if I moved too fast. The hallway felt colder than before. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I walked toward the stairs on legs that did not feel like mine. "My name is Logan Parker. I'm 27. I work as a data analyst at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. We are not flashy. No glass walls or rooftop bars. Just about 30 people who work hard, drink too much coffee, and listen to indie music through cheap office speakers. Most mornings start the same. Rain against the windows. A quick stop at the bakery down the street. Julie from accounting arguing about who forgot to pay last time. Hayden from IT talking about some late-night gaming win. Natalie telling a story so dramatic you would think she was on stage instead of in an office break room. It's simple. Comfortable. Safe. And then there is Margaret Bennett. She is 44. Head of analytics. Always precise. Always calm. Her brown hair is usually tied back tight. Her blouses are crisp and light-colored, never out of place. She is strict about deadlines but fair. If you do not understand something, she explains it without making you feel small. On Fridays, she sometimes brings donuts and stands in the kitchen for 5 minutes like she is one of us, before returning to her office and becoming Margaret Bennett again. I respected her. That part was easy. For the rest of that day, I tried to act normal. I answered emails. I stared at dashboards. I nodded during conversations. But my mind kept replaying that moment. The loose hair, the surprise in her eyes, the soft scent in the room that mixed with coffee and something floral. By lunchtime, we were all outside on the small patio, unwrapping sandwiches. Julie leaned toward me and squinted. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. "Just tired," I replied quickly, forcing a laugh. Hayden tossed a chip at me. "You look worse than tired." I smiled again. It felt fake on my face. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Margaret. "Logan, please come by my office at 2 p.m. My throat went dry. I did not think about project updates or spreadsheets. I thought about HR, about awkward silence, about being labeled the guy who walked in at the wrong moment. At 1:59, I stood outside her office. I stared at the door like it might bite me. Then I knocked. This time I knocked carefully. "Come in," she called. I opened the door slowly. She was sitting behind her desk, composed again, hair tied back, blouse perfectly buttoned. Calm, controlled. If I did not know better, I would have thought I imagined everything. "Logan," she said evenly. "About this morning, what room were you trying to enter?" "The conference room," I said quickly. "I mixed up the doors. It was completely accidental." She lifted her hand gently to stop me. "It's fine," she said. Then she surprised me. She smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one that softened her face. "Mistakes happen," she continued. "Actually, I read your proposal from last week. It was strong." I blinked. She slid a folder toward me. "I want you to lead a small pilot team for the next 6 months. I will oversee it directly." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I had walked in, expecting disaster. Instead, I was being handed the biggest opportunity of my career. When she said she would oversee it directly, something shifted inside me. Not fear, not exactly. Something heavier. Something that had nothing to do with numbers. I nodded like a normal person, but inside, I felt like I had stepped onto something that was already moving. I walked out of her office with 2 feelings fighting in my chest. Relief. And something I refused to name. Back at my desk, Julie immediately messaged me asking what happened. Hayden leaned over my screen. Natalie smiled like she already believed in me. I told them about the pilot team. They cheered. They congratulated me. I smiled with them. But inside I knew one thing for sure. Nothing about my life was simple anymore. The pilot project started fast, like a train that does not wait for anyone to sit down before it moves. Margaret wanted clean numbers, sharp insights, and no excuses. She scheduled weekly check-ins with me in her office. The first time I walked in for one of those meetings, my pulse kicked up the same way it had that morning. I knocked carefully. She told me to come in. Everything looked normal. Papers stacked neatly. A small plant by the window. Her mug placed exactly where it always was. She did not mention the door incident. Not once. That should have made it easier. Instead, it made it harder. It felt like we were both pretending there was no silent wire stretched across the room between us. Every time our eyes met for a second too long, I felt it. Not awkward. Not wrong. Just charged. She leaned forward over my charts, pointing with her pen. "Why did you choose this variable?" she asked. "What happens if this trend shifts next quarter?" Her questions made my brain work twice as fast. She caught small mistakes before I even saw them, but she never made me feel small. When something needed work, she would say, "Good, start. Now, take it further." And every time she said that, something inside me straightened up. I wanted to be better, not just for the project, for her. I started preparing the night before every meeting. Sitting on my couch with my laptop open, rain tapping against my apartment window, double-checking models until my eyes burned. I told myself it was about ambition, about career growth. But if I was honest, it was also about not letting her down. One afternoon, during a long review session, I made a nervous joke. I told her my first draft looked like something from a middle school science fair compared to her standards. I expected her to ignore it. Instead, she laughed. It was short and quiet, but real. It changed the whole room. "Logan," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You are the only person who has ever walked into my office without knocking and still had the courage to apologize immediately." My face warmed again, but this time it was not from embarrassment. "I appreciate honesty," she added. After that, the meeting stretched a little beyond charts and projections. I told her about the chaos on the second floor, about Julie's endless sticker messages, about Hayden's late-night server drama, about Natalie turning every lunch into a performance. Margaret listened like she had been missing something. "It sounds like you have a real community down there," she said once. There was something in her voice I did not expect. It was not jealousy, it was something quieter. "Don't you?" I asked before I could stop myself. She paused. "When you move up," she said carefully, "people stop being real with you. Everything becomes careful." That stayed with me long after I left her office. A few weeks into the project, she opened up in a way that surprised me. It was a gray Seattle afternoon. The sky looked heavy, like it had forgotten how to be anything else. We were reviewing projections when she leaned back in her chair and let out a slow breath. "When I was your age," she said, "I thought I would have everything figured out by now." I blinked. She continued, her eyes drifting toward the window. "I started my own consulting firm right out of college. I poured everything into it. It failed." The word hung in the air. Margaret Bennett did not talk about failure. She talked about metrics and deadlines. "It almost broke me," she said quietly. "People questioned every decision. They assumed I got where I am because of luck. I had to work twice as hard just to belong." I did not know what to say at first. Then I admitted something I had never told anyone at work. "I switched majors twice in college," I said. "I always felt like everyone else had a plan. I was just trying to keep up." Her shoulders relaxed a little. "That feeling does not always disappear," she said. After that, something shifted between us. Not unprofessional, not reckless, just real. Then came the lunch. We finished early one day, and she suggested we grab food nearby to talk about the next phase. We walked to a small Italian place a block away. It was casual, but sitting across from her outside the office walls felt different. She ordered iced tea. I ordered the same without thinking. We talked about the project at first. Then she asked about my weekend. I told her about a hike with Hayden. For a moment she smiled in a way I had never seen before. It made her look younger, lighter. "Logan," she said after a pause, "why are you always so kind?" I blinked. "Kind?" "You show up for people," she said. "You do things without expecting something back." I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with walking into the wrong room. "It just makes work easier," I said quietly. She studied me for a long moment. The air between us felt warmer than it should have. "That's rare," she said softly. When we walked back to the office, the rain had slowed to a mist. The sidewalk reflected traffic lights like blurred stars. She walked beside me, not ahead of me like a boss leading an employee. Beside me. As soon as we stepped inside, I felt it. Two people near the elevator stopped talking. One of them glanced at us, then looked away too quickly. My stomach dropped. The office had noticed. The whispers started small. Jokes in the break room about me being Margaret's favorite. Comments about how suddenly my project had extra resources. I kept my head down, focused on the numbers, on results. But the air had changed. During meetings, I caught sideways looks, raised eyebrows, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Julie noticed first. "Ignore it," she whispered one afternoon. "People get weird when someone moves up." I tried to believe her. Then Marcus stepped in. Marcus was head of sales. Always in a suit, always polished. The kind of man who smiled without warmth. In a cross-department meeting, he leaned back in his chair and spoke casually. "It's interesting," he said, "how some people get fast-tracked into high-profile projects." His eyes flicked toward me. The room went quiet. Margaret responded smoothly. "The pilot team is delivering strong results. Resources follow results." She did not look at me, but I felt her defending me. After the meeting, my inbox pinged. "Logan, come by my office at 3 p.m. I walked up to the 4th floor with a knot in my stomach. When I stepped inside, she was standing by the window this time, not behind her desk. "There's pressure," she said calmly. "The project is under scrutiny." "And so am I." I nodded. "People are suggesting favoritism," she continued. The word landed heavily. "Is there?" I asked quietly. She turned to face me fully. Her eyes were steady. "No." Then she stepped closer to her desk and rested her hands on it. "But I cannot control what people think," she said. "What I can control is how we respond." Silence stretched between us. "Do you want me to back off?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes locked onto mine. "No," she said softly but firmly. "I want you to stay." Something in her voice made my chest tighten. "We're in this together," she added. "Together." The word felt heavier than it should have. As I left her office that day, I understood one thing clearly. This was no longer just about a project. Something was building. And whether we were ready or not, the entire office was watching. The storm did not hit all at once. It built slowly. Side comments. Long looks. Meetings that felt heavier than they should have. Every success we had only made the whispers louder. The pilot team was delivering results. Clean data. Strong projections. Clear impact. On paper, everything was working. But inside the office, tension was spreading like quiet smoke. Julie stayed close to me those weeks. She would slide into my Slack messages with small check-ins. Hayden cracked jokes louder than usual, like he was trying to drown something out. Natalie kept smiling at me in that steady way that said she believed in me even if others did not. Still, I could feel the shift. Marcus did not hide it anymore. In meetings, he would question small details that had nothing to do with sales. He would lean back in his chair, arms crossed, and ask questions that sounded neutral but carried weight underneath. "Are we sure this is scalable?" he would say. Or, "Interesting how quickly this team was formed." He never said it directly. He did not have to. The real test came the week of the demo, the big one. The presentation that would decide whether the pilot expanded company-wide or quietly disappeared. The office felt different that morning. Too quiet. Too focused. Even the music playing through the speakers seemed softer. At 9:45 a.m., the conference room on the 4th floor was packed. Leadership at the front. Department heads along the sides. Marcus standing near the back like he was watching a game he expected to win. Margaret sat at the table, calm as always. A folder in front of her. Hands folded neatly. I stood near the screen with the clicker in my hand. My shirt felt too tight. My palms were damp. For a brief second, I remembered that first morning when I had pushed open the wrong door. How fast everything had changed. Then I started. Slide by slide, I walked them through it. The problem, the model, the tests, the projections, the real-world simulations. I spoke clearly, even when my heart was racing. Questions came fast. What if the market shifts? What about long-term cost? Is the margin stable at scale? I answered each one, not perfectly, but confidently. And every time I glanced toward Margaret, she gave the smallest nod. Not praise, not emotion, just steady belief. That was enough. When I clicked to the final slide, the room fell silent. For 2 long seconds, no one moved. Then the CEO leaned forward. "This exceeds expectations," he said simply. "Full rollout approved." The words hit like sunlight breaking through thick clouds. Applause filled the room, real applause. Not polite, not forced. My shoulders dropped for the first time in weeks. Marcus stepped forward first. He offered his hand. His smile was thin. "Congratulations," he said. I shook his hand anyway. "Thank you," I replied evenly. The meeting ended with handshakes and congratulations. People who had whispered were now clapping my back, smiling, calling it impressive. But through all of it, my eyes kept finding Margaret. She stood near the table, calm but softer somehow. When our eyes met, she gave me a small smile. It was not professional. It was personal. Later that afternoon, the break room turned into an impromptu celebration. Julie organized snacks. Hayden blasted a victory playlist. Natalie hugged me twice, like she had been waiting to do it all day. "You earned this," Julie said firmly. For the first time in weeks, I believed it. But even as the office energy shifted back toward normal, I could feel something else settling between Margaret and me. The pressure had bonded us. That night, the office slowly emptied. Lights flicked off one by one. Conversations faded. I was heading toward the elevator when I noticed her office light was still on. Through the glass, I could see her standing by the window, looking out over the dark Seattle skyline. Her posture looked heavier than usual. Not defeated. Just tired. Without thinking too much, I walked to her door and knocked softly. "Come in," she called. I stepped inside. She turned when she saw me. The strict office mask was gone. Just Margaret, hair slightly loose, shoulders relaxed. "You did great today," she said quietly. "So did you," I replied. She studied me for a moment like she was weighing something important. "I'm glad you're here," she said. The words were simple, but they landed deep. We stood there in the quiet office, city lights reflecting against the window. The space between us felt smaller than before. "I know this hasn't been easy," she continued. "The rumors, the pressure." "I can handle it," I said, "as long as we're clear." She stepped closer to her desk, resting her hands on it. "We are," she said. Silence filled the room again. Not uncomfortable, just charged. For weeks we had walked a careful line, professional, focused, controlled. But now the storm had passed, and something else was rising in its place. "Logan," she said softly. The way she said my name felt different. Slower. "Yes." Quote. Her eyes held mine longer than they ever had before. "We need to be careful," she said. "Not because we're doing anything wrong, but because people will always look for a story." I understood. The office might have calmed down, but perception never truly disappears. "I don't want to damage your career," she added quietly. I took a small step forward without thinking. "You won't," I said. "You didn't choose me because of anything except the work." She looked at me in a way that felt deeper than before, like she was seeing more than just an employee. "That's true," she said. The air between us felt warm, not rushed, not reckless, just real. I realized then that the first moment in that doorway had not been the real turning point. This was. The moment when everything professional had been tested. When both of us had stood under scrutiny and still chosen to trust each other. "We should head home," she said gently, breaking the silence. I nodded. We walked out together. Not touching. Not crossing any lines. But walking side by side. As we reached the elevator, I felt something steady settle inside me. The rumors had not broken us. The pressure had not divided us. If anything, it had made the connection stronger. And for the first time since I opened that door weeks ago, I stopped feeling afraid of what might happen next. Instead, I started wondering what would happen if we finally stopped pretending there was nothing there at all. The weeks after the rollout felt calmer on the surface, but underneath, everything between Margaret and me had shifted. The project was now company-wide. My pilot team had grown. I was in more meetings. My name was mentioned in rooms I had never stepped into before. On paper, it looked like pure career growth, but inside, something else was growing too. Margaret and I kept things professional. In meetings, she was composed and sharp. I was focused and direct. No long looks, no extra conversations. At least not where anyone could see. But in our one-on-ones, something softer lived between us. It was in the pauses, in the way her voice lowered when she asked how I was handling the pressure, in the way I stayed a few seconds longer than necessary after presenting an update. We never crossed a line. But we stood very close to one. One Friday evening, the office was hosting a small team picnic at Discovery Park. It was casual, blankets on the grass, coolers with drinks. Julie had organized it like she organized everything, with too much enthusiasm and not enough planning. The sky was clear for once. The water in the distance reflected the late afternoon sun. It felt lighter than the office ever did. Margaret showed up in jeans and a simple sweater, no crisp blouse, no tight bun. Her hair was loose, brushing against her shoulders in the breeze. For a moment, I remembered the first time I had seen her like that. Unexpected. Human. She blended in easily with the team, laughing at Hayden's loud stories, listening to Natalie dramatize something about a grocery store disaster. Even Marcus kept his distance, choosing to sit on the far side of the picnic blanket. Julie raised her soda can at one point and grinned at me with a look I knew too well. "To Logan," she said loudly, "for proving that spreadsheets can actually be exciting." Everyone laughed. Then she added, without missing a beat, "And to Margaret, for knowing talent when she sees it." There were a few teasing cheers, a couple raised eyebrows. Margaret met my eyes across the blanket. This time, she did not look away. Her smile was open, free, and something inside me stopped holding back. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the group started packing up, I found myself walking beside her toward the edge of the park. The others were behind us, distracted by leftover snacks and inside jokes. For once, no one was watching. The wind carried the smell of salt from the water. The sky was painted in soft orange and blue. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. My heart kicked up a little. About how quickly things changed," she replied, "and how careful we've been." I nodded. "We had to be," I said. "Yes," she agreed, "but we're not in crisis mode anymore." Quote, we stopped walking near a small overlook. The city stretched in the distance. The water shimmered below. She turned to face me fully. "Logan," she said, her voice steady but softer than I had ever heard it. "What happened that morning was an accident, but everything after that was a choice." The air felt still around us. "I chose you for that project because you earned it," she continued, "not because of a moment in a doorway. And I need you to know that." "I know," I said quietly. "And if anything changes between us," she added carefully, "it cannot be because of power. It has to be because we both want it." There it was. Not reckless, not dramatic, clear. I took a slow breath. "I've tried to ignore it," I admitted. "The connection, the way it feels when we talk. But it's there." Her eyes softened. "I know," she said. The distance between us felt smaller now, but not dangerous. Just honest. "I don't want to risk your career," I added. "Or mine." "You won't," she replied. "Not if we do this right." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she did something simple. She reached for my hand. Not quickly, not hidden, just steady. I felt the warmth of her fingers wrap around mine. And instead of panic, instead of fear of whispers or side glances, I felt calm. This was not a scandal. This was not a secret affair born from chaos. This was two people who had stood under pressure, defended each other, and chosen to stay. Behind us, I could hear laughter from the team, life moving forward. The world not collapsing. "I don't know what this looks like tomorrow," I said honestly. "Neither do I," she replied, with a small smile. "But I know it's real." The first time I walked into her office without knocking, I thought I had ruined everything. Now, standing beside her with the sun fading over Seattle, I realized that moment had not been a disaster. It had been a beginning. Not perfect, not simple, but ours.